Hi guys, Emily here with Orchard Creek Homestead. So it's been a few weeks now since we processed our second batch of meat birds, and I kind of wanted to make a video on what the cost breakdown was for that second batch. So just to kind of recap quickly, in the spring, and I have a blog post on our website with kind of the breakdown of what it costs getting into meat birds. But in the spring, we did a batch of meat chickens, and it ended up costing us, after all was said and done, $99 a bird. That includes, of course, purchasing like a growing tub, the electric poultry netting. I will say that our housing unit for the birds, our chicken tractor, was gifted to us, so that was not included in the cost, but it kind of broke down everything. Now the biggest difference with that first batch is that they were heritage birds, so we kept them longer. So we kept them, and I'll have to look back at my notes, like 18 weeks or something like that. Whereas with our meat birds this time, they were jumbo Cornish cross, and we only kept them 8.5 weeks. So that was a huge difference there in terms of like feed costs and stuff like that. But I did want to break it down. One thing that I mentioned in the blog post that I'll mention again, it can be a little expensive getting into raising meat birds, just depending on what you deem expensive. But the more you use those items, so the more we use those feeders and the growing tub and the chicken tractor and all that, the more you use it, the less it'll end up costing in the long run. So at some point you would just get to needing, some bedding and food and stuff like that. It is incredibly important for us to be able to raise our own meat, to not only know that we are feeding our family the best, most nutritious food possible, but also for the welfare of the animals. Caleb, our son, he'll tell you, our animals are happy up until that last moment. And by butchering here on the homestead, we're making sure that last moment is as brief as possible. So with our chickens, for example, we're processing them all ourselves. We make sure that the chickens that are being processed are hidden from the other chickens, so they really can't see what's happening. So one thing we did a little bit differently this time around is, instead of using the chicken tractor that we had, our existing chicken tractor, Rob built us a smaller chicken tractor that was out of like PVC and tin. And you can see that in some of our previous videos where we did kind of the week check-ins. So that was an unexpected cost this time around. So it was a nice self-contained unit, which meant that we didn't need the poultry netting. But we will absolutely use that netting for other animals and other situations. But it's a self-contained unit. It cost us $315 altogether, which includes the cost of the chicken wire. And one thing that we found is the chicken wire itself was at a discounted rate from Rural King because it was missing like tags and stuff like that. But that $315 includes all the PVC pipes, some fittings, screws, the glue and primer needed to fit everything together. The tin and any wood that he used was reclaimed from existing stuff that was already on the homestead. And that's one of the biggest ways that we save money, is by using what's already here on the homestead. So what we've taken, when we've taken buildings apart, reusing the wood from that, scraps of tin that we found in the woods, and just making use of the resources available to us. When they were younger, we spent $6.99 for pine shavings for the brooder, and because they were jumbo Cornish cross and our weather here was so nice, this is one of the benefits of raising them in the fall, is that the weather was so nice we were able to get them outside in their chicken tractor at 2 weeks versus I think it was like 4 or 6 weeks or something with our previous heritage birds. So we only needed one bundle of that pine shavings. With our chicks, we did one bag of chicken starter grower, which was 40 pounds for $19.99. We did another small bag of chicken feed at the very beginning when we first got them in. That was, I want to say, $10 or $11. And then our chicks themselves cost us $135.36. We ordered 40 jumbo cross rocks from McMurray Hatchery. 42 arrived, and we get to processing, we ended up having 38 that we processed. We kept one and we lost a couple. So our miscellaneous food cost. So we actually really lucked out on this. So for the first few weeks, we spent $0 in additional costs for the chicks. for feeding them other than the chick food I previously mentioned, because we traded our Tom turkey for 3 50-pound bags of chicken feed, and that was for the meat chickens and for our laying hens, which we only had 5 laying hens, so they really didn't need that much because they get a lot of scraps as well. So that was a huge cost savings. So really, after those bags were gone, we spent $22 on a bag of chicken food from Tractor Supply, and then we spent an additional $100 on 5 bags of food from our local feed store. So altogether, what we spent on our birds, from feeding them when they were chicks to processing date, we spent only $153 on food. Now, I will say food is our biggest cost. I don't include the cost of, the water or anything that we used. So food is our biggest cost that we spent on them. And it's one of those things that we're trying to figure out how we can get that cost down even more. We have been putting them on fresh grass, but we didn't give them the scraps from the garden like we do our laying hens. So that may be something we want to work on later. But one thing to note is that the cost of chicken food itself has gone up, and it was hard for us to find it. Some of these prices, which I will say, I wanted non-medicated chick food because our chicks themselves, they came from McMurray Hatchery not vaccinated. We opted out for that because we wanted the freshest, best source of food for our family. So what we found was that when we went to Rural King, we went to Tractor Supply, a lot of times their shelves were nearly empty, or all that was left was the most expensive food. And that's something that towards the end of having meat chickens, we kept that into consideration, which is why when we found the local feed mill, Rob bought, 5 bags at once. But it's one of the things that we're keeping in mind, not only in terms of raising meat birds in the future, but also for our sheep and for our cow that we're getting, is to stock up on foods when we can. Because let's face it, guys, the price of everything is going up. We go into the grocery store and we see that the prices are going up on everything. The meats and stuff, you can see that tremendously. What was once an affordable cut of meat last year is no longer affordable. What can you do about it? There's really nothing you can do except for starting to raise more stuff on your own. All right, but let's get into the juicy part. So, what did our birds end up being after all was said and done? So I'm going to pull out my calculator real quick and calculate what we spent. And like I said, the chicken tractor was an unexpected expense. We already had a previous chicken tractor that was great and that we could have used, but we decided to go with something new. So when all is said and done, our cost invested this year was $610.35. And we ended up with 38 birds in our freezer. So our birds ended up costing us $16.06 each. Now, if we had used our existing chicken tractor, which again was given to us for free, which is, Rob ended up finding it through a guy he worked with, but you can also find free stuff like this on the internet, like Craigslist, Facebook groups, all sorts of places, people just trying to give away stuff that's taking up space on their property. So if we had not built a new chicken tractor, our cost would have been only $7.77 per bird, which is huge. So that's more probably what we're looking at in the future, is $7.77. So we're probably looking at spending $8 a bird when things are all said and done. So that's comparable to what you can find in the grocery store, which is huge. We're having food that's, processed much closer to home, that is much more nutritional, that is better for the animal, and we're spending $8 a bird for it. That is huge. So is it worthwhile doing meat chickens? Absolutely. Now, like I said, you can look at our blog post and see that we spent $99 a bird the first time, and we have gotten that down to only $8 a bird. Now, if you start out doing meat chickens and you decide to skip like the electric poultry netting because you're doing a chicken tractor from the get-go, you're definitely not going to be spending $99 a bird. I think our poultry netting was $500-$600 just in itself. But if you have the opportunity to raise your own chickens, if you have the space, if you have the want, if you have the need to do so, then by all means do it. It is absolutely worth it. If you've already kept meat birds, I would love to hear how it's gone for you, what you may have spent on it, how much your birds ended up costing you. Comment below. And like I said, I'd love to hear it. But thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a good one.